Okay, so I'm going to try to explain briefly what all of these quantum numbers mean in chemistry, the S's and the P's and the D's and all of that stuff, okay? So we're going to talk about racetracks and rockets. I'm going to kind of mix my metaphors here. All right, so first we're going to go over the rockets. You know how when we launch a rocket out into space, it takes a lot of energy. Here's my rocket. And it has to, if you've ever seen a rocket launch off, all the fire comes out of the bottom here, and it propels it so the rocket can take off and go out into space. With the planet, like here's the planet, and around the planet is the blue sky, right? So here's the blue sky section of the atmosphere around planet Earth. And then around that is like the ozone layer around the blue sky around the Earth. And then around the ozone layer we have like another layer. Around the ozone layer we have like another layer of atmosphere, and then finally around that we have like the starry outer space, what we think of as outer space. We have an orbit going around there. Well, it's not an orbit, but we have the area around there. So as the rocket takes off, here's the rocket on planet Earth. So in order for the rocket to get out into the blue sky, it needs a whole bunch of energy, right, to take off. So that's what all this fire and stuff is here for, to propel the rocket off of the ground, to get it off the ground and into the sky. So that takes a certain amount of energy. Well, now that the rocket is in the sky, it takes another amount of energy to break through that barrier of the blue sky and get into the green ozone layer here. And it takes even more energy to break through the barrier and to get into this pink layer out here. And then it takes even more energy to get into the space, the blackness out here. So the farther and farther away from the planet that the rocket wants to launch off and go to, it needs more and more and more energy. Every time it skips into another layer, it takes more energy to get there. Okay? Which is why an airplane can't just fly off into space, because it doesn't have enough energy. It only has enough energy to fly off into the blue sky and then fly around here. Right? So an airplane can only fly around here in this blue sky area. So we need a rocket ship that has enough energy to propel far enough to get up into the ozone layer, and then propel from there and get up into the pink layer, and then propel from there and get into outer space. Right? So if you think about an atom, there's a nucleus, and that would be like planet Earth in this example. And there are levels, atmospheres, if you will, levels around the nucleus in an atom. And for an electron to move from one level to another level, to get into another level, to get into another level, to get into another level, each time it wants to go into another level further and further away from the nucleus, it takes more energy. And so what do we call these little atmosphere layers that get further and further away from the nucleus? Well, so each layer is called an energy level. the energy level, each energy level is, you can also call it a shell. It's the same thing. Okay, so each of these circles, each of these atmospheres, just like the rocket taking off, it goes into the blue sky atmosphere or blue sky layer, then it goes into that green ozone layer, then it goes into that pink outer layer, and then it goes into the outer space layer out here. Each layer is a level. So we call them energy levels because it takes energy to go out into the next level. And they're also called shells. It's the same thing. These are used interchangeably. These terms are used interchangeably. Okay, now that we've talked about energy levels and shells, here's the center. Now the first energy level is pretty small around the center. So think of this as a racetrack. If you want to race, you know, a racetrack goes around and around and around, and there's usually grass or something in the center. So this would be a racetrack, a round racetrack. And this is at the first energy level, or shell. Now, only 2 cars can fit on a racetrack at a time. Here's my little car. And here's another little car. Only 2 cars can fit on this racetrack at once. Otherwise, it would be too crowded and they'd crash into each other, or it would be like a traffic jam or something. So you don't want a traffic jam. So only 2 cars can get on a racetrack at a time. So what happens if a third car comes along? Here's another car. And it comes along and it goes, hey guys, I want to race too. Well, so if a third car comes along and wants to race, and there's already 2 cars taking up this racetrack here, then this third car has to get on a new track. It has to take up a new racetrack because only 2 cars are allowed on a racetrack at a time. Now that first energy level or energy shell, that small sphere that goes around the center, that's pretty close to the center, there is no more room for another racetrack to go around here like this. Here's a car, here's a car. There's 2 cars already taking up this racetrack, and there's no more room for, like, we can't build another racetrack onto this in this little bitty small space here. So the third car is going to have to go up to the next energy level, which is a larger racetrack because it's further away from the center, so that makes it larger. So now the third car is happy and driving around this racetrack around here on the second energy level. Well, another car comes along and goes, hey, I want to race too. But there's only 1 car on this racetrack right now. So a second car can come along, car number 2, and get on this racetrack also. But now that's it for this racetrack because only 2 cars can go on a racetrack at a time. So what if a third car comes along and goes, hey, I want to drive too? It's going to have to go on a different racetrack because there's already 2 cars taking up this blue layer racetrack, this outer layer racetrack. But the thing is that that blue outer layer, this energy level, this second one is large enough, far away from the center, that they can actually build another racetrack the same size as this circle. So this next racetrack they're going to build is going to be fancy. It's going to be like an infinity sign. And it's going to go like that. So this car number 3, can go on this racetrack and drive around. Another car comes along, a 4th car, and the 4th car can come on the same new infinity sign track. But what if a fifth car comes along? Here's a fifth car coming along. Hey, this looks fun. I want to drive too. Put a 5 on there for car number 5. Well, there are already 2 cars on this lower energy shell one, the first energy shell one, the black layer. And there's already 2 cars on this energy level shell, the circle one, the blue layer, car number 1 and car number 2. And then we built another racetrack in the shape of an infinity symbol on the same energy level, on the same shell. But there's already 2 cars on there. So that one's filled up too. So we're going to build another racetrack, and we're going to do the same shape as that other one, but we're going to do it this way because there's enough room. So this car can now come and get onto this racetrack. And if a 6th car comes along, the 6th car can get on this racetrack too and drive around. And if you get a 7th car coming in, then you're either going to have to build a new racetrack within this energy level, or the car can go on a much bigger energy level, a new shell number 3, that's even further away from the center. And the first racetrack that they build far away from the center is this round one. But say that one's filled up. Say that one has 2 cars, car number 1 and car number 2. Well, so they can build another racetrack still in that same energy level. They can do that infinity sign again and go like this. And so 2 more cars can fit on there. And then what if 1 or 2 more cars come along and want to race? Well, they can build, they have room, there's enough room, so they can build another racetrack going like this, and so on and so forth. In this analogy, these racetracks are in different shapes, if you notice. The first racetrack that you build around the energy level is just a round one, it's a sphere. So the circle is always the first racetrack to be built around in a new energy level. So this is the shape of a sphere. But the next racetrack they build at the same energy level is a different shape, isn't it? This shape is of an infinity sign, or a dumbbell. People always say it looks like a dumbbell, but I think it looks more like an infinity sign. So there are different shapes that you can make racetracks all within one energy level if there's room. And the higher and higher the energy levels get, the further and further away they get from the center, the bigger and bigger they are. So the bigger and bigger they are, the more racetracks they can build in different various shapes within that energy level. Okay, as we said, each energy level is called a shell, but within each shell there are different shaped racetracks. The different shapes of the racetracks in one shell is called a subshell. So subshell shape, subshell shape. Those are the different shapes in one shell, on one energy level. Now the individual racetracks, because notice there's the same there's like 3 infinity signs on the same energy level. So there's 3 the same shape. So you can't go, I want to go to energy level 3 and get on the infinity sign shaped racetrack, because there's more than one. So you have to say which individual racetrack you want. So each individual racetrack is called an orbital. Okay, so we have a shell, and that's the atmosphere layers, the layers that get bigger and bigger and bigger around the center. Then there's a subshell, and those are different shapes of racetracks that are built around in the shell. So the subshells would be, there would be a sphere, there would be an infinity sign, etc. And then the orbital is the specific racetrack that you want to go on. Like when you go on, if you want to go out to this outer layer here and get on one of these racetracks, do you want to get on, and you want to get on the an infinity shaped racetrack? Do you want the green one or do you want the orange one? Right? So there's a green infinity sign shaped one at this level, and there's an orange one. Which one do you want to get on? Do you want to get on the green infinity sign, or do you want to get on the orange infinity sign at this shell, at this energy level? Okay, so that's the orbital. That's the specific racetrack that you want to get on. The shape of the racetrack is called a subshell, and the size of the racetrack, how far away it is from the center, is called the shell. So I hope that makes sense. And don't forget, the whole reason why this is like this is because only 2 cars per racetrack at a time. Once 2 cars are on a racetrack, the next car has to go use a new racetrack. And if you haven't guessed by now, the car analogy is equal to an electron.